You know, I've been thinking a lot lately about how we all dream of that perfect getaway. Maybe a sunny beach or a majestic mountain view. But here's the thing I've learned over the years. Sometimes those dream destinations can turn into a bit of a nightmare, especially for us as we get older. Did you know that about 70% of seniors like us head off to places that could quietly put our health at risk? I sure didn't until I started digging into this. If you've got something like a heart condition, arthritis, or maybe some breathing troubles, it's even more important to pay attention. Take my friend Tom, for example. He was 71, full of energy, and couldn't wait to soak up the sun on a tropical island down in the Caribbean. But what he didn't expect was ending up in the hospital with heat exhaustion so bad he could barely move. It broke my heart to see his dream trip turn into days hooked up to N4. That's why I'm sitting down with you today, to share 6 places we really need to think twice about visiting. These spots might look perfect on a postcard, but they can be tricky for us as we age. Now, I'd love for you to stick with me all the way to the end because number 6, it's one that so many of us overlook. It's a real sneaky danger, especially for folks our age, and I've seen it catch people off guard. I'll never forget hearing about Sarah, a sweet 73-year-old from Ohio. She went on what she thought would be an exciting adventure abroad, but poor sanitation and a nasty stomach bug landed her in a rural clinic far from home. By the time her family got her help, it was too late. She didn't make it back. Stories like that just stick with you, you know? Before we dive in, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that like button. It helps me share these little nuggets of wisdom with more folks like us who deserve to travel smart and safe. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It's free, and turning on that bell means you won't miss a thing. Oh, and if you're enjoying this, drop a 1 in the comments. If it's not your cup of tea, a 0 is fine too. I just want to make sure I'm giving you what you need. Alright, let's get going. First up, those breathtaking high-altitude spots. You ever dreamed of standing on a mountain peak, feeling like you're on top of the world? Places like the Rockies in Colorado, Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, or even Santa Fe up in New Mexico can take your breath away, literally. But here's the catch. As we get older, that thin air up there can hit us harder than we expect. Our bodies don't adjust to low oxygen as well as they used to, and that's where things can get dicey. Altitude sickness isn't just a little headache, it can turn into something serious fast. I heard about this lovely lady, Ellen, a 69-year-old from California. She'd always wanted to visit Santa Fe, with its artsy vibe and stunning views at over 7,000 feet. She got there, all excited, but within hours she was dizzy, short of breath, and feeling like her head was about to split open. She figured it was just jet lag, but by morning, she couldn't even get out of bed. Her daughter rushed her to a clinic, and the doctor said it was severe altitude sickness. Ellen spent her whole trip recovering instead of exploring. Can you imagine how disappointing that must have been? That's the thing with high altitudes. Symptoms can start small, like a headache or feeling winded, but they can snowball into nausea, confusion, or even fluid building up in your lungs or brain. Scary stuff, right? If you're set on a high-up adventure, talk to your doctor first, especially if your heart or lungs aren't what they used to be. Ease into it. Maybe spend a couple of days at a lower spot before climbing higher. Drink tons of water, skip the wine, and keep an eye out for any weird feelings. There's even a med called Diamox that might help, but check with your doc. If that sounds like too much hassle, why not try something easier on the system? The Smoky Mountains in Tennessee or the Green Hills of Vermont give you that gorgeous scenery without making you gasp for air. Travel's all about enjoying yourself, not fighting your body, don't you think? Alright, let's talk about those sunny, warm places we all dream about. Think Arizona deserts, Texas in July, or maybe a beach down in South Padre Island. I get it, there's nothing like feeling that sun on your face, especially after a long winter. But here's the honest truth. As we get older, extreme heat can be more than just uncomfortable. It can knock us flat if we're not careful. Our bodies don't cool down as easily anymore, and if you've got something like heart trouble or diabetes, it's like the heat's got a target on your back. I'll never forget my old neighbor, Hank. He was 74, fit as a fiddle, or so he thought. He took a trip to Phoenix one summer, excited to play some golf and soak up the desert vibes. It was over 100 degrees, and he figured he'd be fine with a hat and some water. But halfway through the day, he started feeling woozy, sweating buckets, and then, bam, he collapsed right on the course. Heat stroke, the paramedic said. His temp shot up past 104, and it was touch and go for a bit. Hank pulled through, thank goodness, but he told me later. I had no idea the heat could sneak up on me like that. That's what gets me about hot climates. It's not just about feeling sweaty. Dehydration can creep in because we don't always feel thirsty like we used to. Then there's heat exhaustion, dizziness, confusion, that heavy feeling, and if it turns into heat stroke, you're talking organ damage or worse. I read somewhere from the CDC that us older folks are way more likely to get hit hard by this stuff, and I believe it after seeing Hank. So, what can we do if we still want that warm getaway? First off, maybe skip the scorching hotspots during peak summer. Places like San Diego or Oregon's coast have that lovely mild weather instead, sunshine without the frying pan effect. If you're set on a hot spot, check with your doctor to make sure you're up for it. Pack light clothes, slap on sunscreen, and keep a water bottle glued to your hand. Oh, and listen to your body. If you're feeling off, find some shade and rest. No point pushing it and ending up sidelined. I've learned this the hard way too. Years ago, I tried a day trip to Palm Springs in August. Thought I'd be fine, but I ended up guzzling water like a camel and still felt like I was melting. Never again. Now I stick to spring or fall for those warmer spots. It's all about enjoying the trip, not battling the thermometer, right? Let's keep that in mind as we plan our next adventure. Stay cool and stay safe out there. You ever feel that itch to get out into the wild, someplace like Yellowstone, the backwoods of Alaska, or even the Badlands in South Dakota? I totally get it. There's something magical about being surrounded by nature, away from all the noise of daily life. But here's where I've got to be real with you. Those remote wilderness spots can be a whole different beast for us as we age. The big issue? If something goes wrong out there, help might be miles, or hours, away. Let me tell you about my buddy Jim. He was 70, loved hiking more than anything, and decided to tackle a trail deep in Yosemite. He'd been active his whole life, so he figured he was good to go. But halfway through, he slipped on a rock, twisted his ankle, and suddenly realized he was alone with no cell signal. It took a ranger spotting him by chance and a 4-hour rescue to get him out. Jim was lucky. He just ended up with a sprained ankle and a bruised ego. But he kept saying, "What if it had been my heart or something worse?" That stuck with me ever since. See, that's the thing with these far-off places. Sure, the views are incredible, but if you've got a condition like high blood pressure or asthma, or even just a random bad day, it can turn serious fast. A little fall, a sudden chest pain, or even dehydration, no one's around to help, and that's when it hits you how isolated you really are. I hate to sound like a worrywart, but I've seen too many folks not think about that part. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we can't enjoy nature. We just need to be smart about it. Stick to places like national parks with ranger stations or trails near towns. Maybe join a guided group. Those folks know the land and can spot trouble before it gets big. Tell someone your plans, pack a charged phone, or even grab one of those satellite gadgets if you're feeling fancy. It's all about keeping the adventure fun without rolling the dice on your health. I've switched to day hikes near home myself, like in Shenandoah National Park. You still get the trees, the birds, the peace, but I know I'm not stranded if my knees start acting up. It's a trade-off, sure, but I'd rather enjoy the view than worry about making it back. What do you think? Got a favorite nature spot that's safe and close? Let's chat about those big, bustling cities. Think Chicago, Los Angeles, or maybe Miami. They've got everything, don't they? Amazing food, museums, shows. It's like the world's packed into a few square miles. I used to love that energy when I was younger, but now? I've got to admit, it can wear me out just thinking about it. For us seniors, those crowded streets and constant buzz can be more than just tiring. They can actually mess with our health in ways we don't always see coming. I remember my cousin Betty, 72, heading to LA for a grandkid's graduation. She was so excited, planned to hit the Walk of Fame, grab some tacos, the whole deal. But after a day of dodging crowds, breathing that thick smog, and listening to horns blaring, she came back to her hotel wiped out. Her asthma flared up something awful, and she spent the next day coughing instead of celebrating. She told me, "I didn't realize how much it'd take out of me." That's when I started looking into this stuff. Big cities can hit us with a double whammy: air pollution and stress. All that exhaust and haze, it's tough on lungs, especially if you've got COPD or something like that. I saw a study from some smart folks at Harvard saying even a short stint in bad air can up your chances of heart trouble or a stroke. Then there's the noise, cars, construction, people everywhere. It's not just annoying, it can spike your stress, mess with your sleep, and even make it harder to think straight if you're already feeling a bit foggy. I'm not saying we should skip cities altogether, there's so much to love. But maybe we pick smaller spots instead. Take Savannah, Georgia, gorgeous history, quiet streets, and fresh air off the river. Or Asheville, North Carolina, with its artsy vibe and mountain breeze. You still get culture and good eats without feeling like you're running a marathon through a fog of fumes. If you do hit a big city, maybe plan shorter days, stick to quieter corners, and keep your inhaler handy if you need it. I tried Chicago once lately, thought I'd handle it fine. But the crowds at the Bean and the traffic noise. I was done by noon. Next time, I'm sticking to a smaller town where I can breathe easy and enjoy myself. How about you? Ever felt overwhelmed in a big city? Okay, let's talk about cruises. Those floating hotels with endless buffets, ocean views, and a lounge chair calling your name. I'll bet a lot of us have thought about hopping on one, right? It sounds like the perfect way to kick back and see the world without lifting a finger. But here's something I've learned the hard way. Those ships can be a little sneaky when it comes to our health, especially as we get older. All those people packed in tight? It's like a party for germs, and we're the ones who might end up paying the price. Take my friend Clara. She was 68 and booked a week-long cruise down to the Bahamas. She'd been counting the days, picturing herself sipping lemonade by the pool. But 3 days in, she's hit with this awful stomach bug, vomiting the works. Turns out it was norovirus, that nasty thing that spreads like wildfire on ships. She spent half her trip stuck in her cabin, too sick to even peek at the ocean. She said, "I thought I'd be relaxing, not fighting to keep water down." It's stories like that that make me pause. Here's the deal. With thousands of folks sharing air, food, and handrails, stuff like norovirus, flu, even pneumonia can bounce around fast. For us, that's no small thing. Dehydration or a bad cough can hit harder when you're not 20 anymore. I've heard about whole ships where hundreds get sick at once. It's not just bad luck, it's the setup. Buffet lines, crowded shows, recycled air. It's a recipe for trouble if you're not careful. Now, I'm not saying ditch the cruise idea completely. If you're set on it, maybe try a shorter trip, 3 or 4 days instead of a full week. Smaller ships or river cruises are great too, less people, less chaos. Get your shots up to date, flu, pneumonia, whatever your doc recommends. Wash your hands like it's your job, skip the buffet if you can, and pack some meds just in case, something for nausea or a runny gut. Clara wishes she'd done that. Might have saved her trip. I took a short cruise once myself, thought I'd beat the odds. I was fine, but the guy next to me at dinner was hacking up a lung. Made me nervous the whole time. Next time, I might just stick to a beach house instead, same ocean, no shared germs. What do you think? Ever had a cruise go sideways on you? Now, let's get into something I think a lot of us don't see coming: traveling to developing countries. Places like parts of Southeast Asia, rural Central America, or maybe some spots in the Caribbean off the tourist track. I totally get the appeal, the culture, the colors, the chance to see something completely different. But I've got to level with you, for us seniors, these trips can come with some big health risks that we might not be ready for. It's not just about packing light, it's about what happens if things go wrong. I'll never forget my pal Ed. He was 71, loved exploring, and booked a trip to a small village in Guatemala. He wanted to see the markets and taste real local food. But one day, he grabbed a glass of water from a street vendor, thinking it was fine. Next thing you know, he's doubled over with a bacterial infection so bad he ended up in a tiny clinic with no real equipment. It took days to get him stable, and he said the scariest part was realizing how far he was from decent help. Ed made it home, but he's still shaken up about it. That's the thing with these places, water's a big one. Tap water might not be clean like we're used to, and even brushing your teeth with it can land you in trouble. You're talking traveler's diarrhea, or worse, stuff like dysentery that can knock you out cold. Food's another gamble. Street stalls might not have the hygiene we expect, and then there's tropical bugs like malaria or dengue fever floating around. For us, with maybe a weaker immune system or meds we're already on, that's a lot to handle. If you're itching for that international vibe, I'd say pick spots with solid healthcare and clean water, like Canada, Portugal, or even Costa Rica. They've got the charm without the dice roll. If you're dead set on a developing spot, stick to bottled water, check the seal, skip raw stuff like salads, and see a travel doc first for shots or pills you might need. Ed wishes he'd done that. Might have saved him a week of misery. I tried a trip like that once, thought I'd be fine in rural Mexico. Ended up sipping only soda for days because I didn't trust the water. It's not worth the worry, you know? Stick to places where you can relax, not play health roulette. So, we've been on quite a journey together, haven't we? From those lofty mountains to sizzling deserts, wild forests, buzzing cities, cruise ships, and far-off lands, I hope you're walking away with a few things to chew on. I know I've learned a ton just putting this together for you. The big takeaway for me is this: we don't have to give up exploring the world as we get older, but we've got to do it with our eyes open. Those dream trips? They're still out there, just waiting for us to pick the right ones and plan smart. I think about folks like Tom, Ellen, Hank, and Clara. Each of them had their hearts set on a great adventure, but little hiccups turned into big headaches. It doesn't have to be that way for us. Whether it's checking with your doctor before a high-altitude hike, packing extra water for a sunny day, or picking a cozy town over a packed city, these little steps can make all the difference. I want you to have those amazing moments, snapping photos, tasting new foods, making memories, without the worry of ending up sidelined. So, here's my hope for you: take what we've talked about and weave it into your next trip. Maybe you'll skip that scorching beach in August for a breezy spot in May, or trade a remote trail for a park with a ranger nearby. Whatever you choose, keep your health front and center. It's the key to enjoying every second out there. I've started doing that myself, and let me tell you, it's a game changer. Last fall, I hit up the Blue Ridge Mountains instead of pushing for something riskier, and I came back feeling refreshed, not frazzled. Now I'd love to hear from you. What's one thing you're going to try next time you pack your bags? Maybe you've got a travel tip of your own from a trip you've taken. Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one, and I bet others could use your wisdom too. While you're there, give this video a like, if it's helped you out, and hit subscribe so we can keep chatting about ways to live our best, healthiest lives. That little bell? Click it too, you won't miss a thing. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. It means the world to share this with you. Here's to safe, wonderful travels ahead, full of joy and none of the stress. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.